We decided to produce a review on this flight as it represented a number of firsts for not only our flight reviewer, but also for the long-haul channel. It's our first visit to Mauritius, and thus our first flight with Air Mauritius. It's also our reviewer's first flight aboard an A350-900 and the first A350 flight review we'll have on the channel. And for those travelling, it's the first international trip after the pandemic. So with all of these exciting firsts to go over in this flight review and a lot to cover, let's get started. Even after having done so many times before, arriving at OR Tambo Airport for our flight reviewer was still met with a little confusion as to where they were supposed to be. Part of this was due to the fact that, for a few years, it seemed that every time they went to the airport, something had changed. Sometimes it was something structural, sometimes it was access to the parking, and sometimes it was the location of the arrivals and departures terminals and whether they were for domestic or international flights. The other part of the confusion was due to the constantly changing policies and preventative measures in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. New checkpoints, restricted access to check-in desks, and pop-up COVID testing stations are all likely to make even local passengers feel a little unfamiliar with their local airport. Thankfully, as of crafting this review, many of these restrictions have eased, which means the next trip to the airport will most likely be another big change, but this time feature less pandemic-related red tape. Nonetheless, it'll probably still require a reorientation to the newest post-pandemic layout. Having found departures and the check-in desks for Air Mauritius, it was quickly apparent that this would be a fairly full flight. A long string of travellers was evidence that we were all tired of staying home and were ready to see the world, or at least a tropical island fairly close to home. The check-in process was smooth and mostly no different from any other flight our traveller had taken before. There was one exception, however. Upon checking in, we were asked to produce proof of a hotel booking in Mauritius. This was definitely new to our flight reviewer, as they were used to border control asking for contact details and proof of accommodation when arriving at the destination airport. But this proof of accommodation has never been experienced before a departure flight, at least not for us. However, from what we've learned since then, this was most likely to prove that the hotel was one that could officially provide quarantine should it be necessary. With all that out of the way, a bag was checked in and a boarding pass was issued. It's worth mentioning that Air Mauritius allows economy passengers from South Africa to check in 2 bags up to 20 kilograms each. This seemed fairly generous considering that a 1-week stay for our traveller only required a single bag weighing 16 kilograms. But if you're planning to make a significant move or have a longer-term trip, the generous baggage allowance should come in handy. From here it was, thankfully, an uneventful security check and then some time in the duty-free shopping area before the flight. From one of the cafes there was a great view of the plane we would soon be boarding, one of Air Mauritius's fairly new A350-900s. This particular A350-900 XWB was named Le Morne Brabant after a significant peninsula on the coast of Mauritius. Registered 3 Bravo November Bravo Papa, this aircraft is the airline's oldest A350 at just over 5 years old at the time of this video's production. Air Mauritius has a total of 4 A350-900s in its fleet, and these are configured with 28 business class seats and another 298 seats for economy class. For some background information about the aircraft's name, Le Morne Brabant is a large basalt formation that towers above the coastline. It was once a hideout for runaway slaves. Sadly, it is also the site where hundreds of those slaves jumped to their deaths in an attempt to avoid being enslaved again. Moving on to boarding, once the process started, it took less than 5 minutes to get to the assigned seat in row 32. The interior was noticeably spacious and still had that fresh, new plane feel to it. The seatbacks had small and large pockets, and there was a rather generous 11.6-inch Full HD screen, which is believed to be equivalent to that on Virgin Atlantic's A350s and not many others. The seats were comfortable and the headrests were easily adjustable with winged flaps on the side to provide more support. There was also a handy footrest that folded up neatly against the seat in front when not in use. The legroom of our main reviewer was fairly decent at 31 inches pitch. Recline is decent, even if part of the mechanics results in the seat base sliding forward, bringing one's knees a little closer to the seat in front. But if you ever find yourself flying on this plane in economy and would like the extra space, make sure to book seats near the exits. You'll lose a little seat width due to the placement of the tray table, and you won't have a seat in front of you to stow your bag or jacket under, but you can stretch out to your heart's or legs' content. Navigating in-flight entertainment on the Air Mauritius flight was smooth and responsive. The initial language options were English, Chinese, and French. After selecting the language option, the system opens up options for movies, television, music, and games, as well as some informational options, including My Flight for tracking the flight's progress. The movie selection was a great mix of new and old, classics and lesser-known films. The catalogue also included a large selection of Bollywood films and French content. In Mauritius, the generally accepted official languages are English and French, but the common language among the locals is a French-based Mauritian Creole. Many of the island's inhabitants are of Indian descent. Headphones were complimentary for the in-flight entertainment system, as was a COVID kit comprising 2 masks and a little bottle of sanitizing spray. About an hour and a half into the flight, the cabin crew served the in-flight meal. The meal was served with a choice of beverage, and the cutlery was stainless steel stamped with the Air Mauritius branding. For this flight, the Cape Malay-style chicken curry was selected, which was served with vegetables, rice, a couscous salad, a bread roll and a soft cheese wedge. The dessert was a sticky brown pudding. Some travellers, including our flight reviewer, enjoy airline food, as there can be a nice range of items on the tray. This particular meal was delicious, as the chicken was tender and tasty, and the vegetables were cooked but not overdone. The sticky pudding was a satisfying way to round off the meal. With the meal happily consumed and about 2.5 hours left on the flight, it was time to dig into the IFE and doze off here and there. The flight was scheduled for 4 hours and arrived approximately 15 minutes early. Leaving Johannesburg at 13:35 on a cold and drizzly day, it was fantastic to arrive in Mauritius at 19:20 local time and feel the warm, tropical air. It was approaching winter time for the island as it was in South Africa, but the Mauritian winter temperatures were comparable to early summer temperatures back home. Sir Sibusagur Ramgoolam International Airport was clean, well laid out, and the staff were friendly. The queues at customs moved quickly and were well attended. At the time, it was required that each passenger had proof of vaccination and printed out the all-in-one digital travel form to be presented to designated health officials upon arrival. This form contained identification information for each traveller, as well as flight details and accommodation and transport info. Vaccination status and the usual list of questions regarding symptoms and possible contact with COVID patients were also present. Once this was handed in, passengers received a small card to be handed in at the next checkpoint before collecting baggage. This was a relatively quick process with no fuss. With baggage in hand, passengers could make their way to the information stand of the company through which they'd booked their holiday. If you're in this situation, you'll be greeted by friendly staff who start off by providing a bottle of water before escorting guests to the taxi outside, which would drive directly to the hotel. The experience on board the Air Mauritius A350 was certainly pleasant and quite comfortable. Should our travellers have the opportunity to travel to Mauritius again, they noted that they would be more than happy to use the airline. In all of the interactions with Air Mauritius crew, customs officials, drivers and the local inhabitants of the island, one thing was consistently apparent: friendliness and welcoming smiles come as standard. Have you flown with Air Mauritius before? And how do you feel this wide-body experience compares to that of your favourite airline? Share your opinions by leaving a comment. Simple Flying publishes over 150 articles every week. If you're looking for the latest aviation news and insights, visit simpleflying.com.